Hello, and welcome once more to Blood, Books, and Binge-Watching. Megan here, along with Rachel, to bring you our second installment in our Ari Aster series with a recap and review of Hereditary. Last week, we dove into the world of cult mentality and mental abuse. This week, we're here to talk about grief and family trauma. Yay! Hooray! So happy!
All the warm fuzzies!
Oh yeah, you thought we were taking a break from Blood and Ash to go do happy things on this podcast?
Are you crazy?
Never. So this film lands on either you love it or you hate it spectrum, like most of the A24 movies usually seem to be. 2018 was also a very big year for horror legacies. We had Halloween, the Conjuring universe was, continued. We had an Insidious movie, one of the Purge movies, they all had movies come out that year. However, the top grossing was an original idea. Any guesses from the listeners? I'll give you a second. It was A Quiet Place, because I forget, just how really long ago, because thinking about it, you don't want to think about it too long about how long ago this really was, but that's 8 years ago?
It really doesn't seem
7
like
years
that.
ago. Right.
It feels like it's 2 years ago.
Yeah, and Quiet Place, fantastic movies.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps some that we may need to cover at some point. Maybe?
For sure. Absolutely.
Because I am a massive fan of all three of them.
Same
I
here.
think they are all fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they make more because
I do too.
A+. Where Hereditary fell in the year of 2018, it was number 7 in terms of the gross box office that year. So very solid performance. And a good year for, you had all the legacy movies. But then it was a good year for the original ideas.
Yeah.
Very great.
Yeah, it really was. Before we kick off into this even more, I just have to say, for those of you that are listening, I've already complained about this a little bit. Anyone that is watching The Last of Us, so I did not play the video games. Megan knows this. I did not.
Yes.
And so for anyone, I won't say any spoilers. I'm just going to say that the episode that just came out, what is that? Episode 5 of season 2. Yeah. I watched it in the middle of the day yesterday, and I still cannot stop thinking about it. Do not recommend.
Lives in the brain rent-free.
Do not recommend doing that. Anyways, because we're on our cinema aspect of our podcast, I just had to put it out there. The show has me on my fucking toes. So, Hereditary is Ari Aster's first feature film, and wow, does he knock it straight over the Green Monster out of the park.
I wrote that joke because I'm from Boston. I forgot you were reading that part.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
You made a Fenway Park reference.
I am now, by affiliation, a Boston fan. Not only has he written an incredibly tragic story about a family's struggle with grief, both together as well as individually, but he brought together a truly talented group of actors to tell the story and add in all of the horror elements that we love a lot. Seeing this movie for the first time was very, very, very jarring. And I don't think either of us had any idea what to expect at all whatsoever. I know I didn't. All we knew was it was horror, and isn't that how it always should be? Hereditary.
I agree.
Hereditary contains some of the creepiest shots and award-worthy acting, especially when it comes to our girl, Toni Collette, who, and I actually did not know this until you mentioned it, she was not acknowledged during award season whatsoever, and that is crazy to me.
Yep, I did look into it, so I don't want to say that she went awardless for this movie, but when we think of the awards as in the big 2 of the Oscars and Golden Globes, no recognition in that sort, but and a lot of smaller independent award shows, they did get nominated and she did win things, so I don't want to take that away from her. She 100% did get awarded for it. It just wasn't in your the first 2 that come to mind when you say award shows,
Okay.
Yeah.
That is crazy, though. So give horror the credit that it is due. When will we see horror more widely recognized at these award shows? Hopefully sometime in the next few years would be nice.
Would be great. So to give you guys a little bit of information about the movie, like we did in the last episode, so this one was also directed and written by Ari Aster, and our main cast is composed of, as we've already said, Toni Collette playing Annie, Gabriel Bryn, who plays Steve, Alex Wolff playing Peter, he's a fantastic actor as well, and Millie Shapiro as Charlie, who was also really fantastic in this movie. Literally everybody is so fantastic in this movie. What a surprise. Almost like Ari Aster is really good at making movies. This one was released on June 8th, 2018, also rated R, but just to give you a broad trigger warning for the movie, there is suicide and death of a child. So just keep that in mind if you plan on listening to this one. And the worldwide gross landed at $87.8 million. Good show. Good show. So landed them at number 7 in horror movies that year.
And also just a very gentle disclaimer in case you are a new watcher and have not watched our book section of this podcast. We do love to swear. We have foul mouths. So this podcast is also rated R.
Oh, yes. I feel like that's self-explanatory. Well, no, it's not self-explanatory, but absolutely. 100% it is rated R. NC-17, if you will. You know?
Yeah.
They're just the things we talk about. No need to go further with that one. Gonna stop that train before it leaves the station. All right. So, with that, let us dive into the plot of Hereditary. We open on an obituary for someone named Ellen Tapper Lee, who is 78, and they have passed away after a prolonged illness. The obituary says that they are the mother of Annie, grandmother of Peter and Charlie, and mother-in-law to Steve. There is very eerie music, and it cuts to the view of like a treehouse outside of a window, and then we get credits. So that's all we get so far. So it's a much more brief introduction than we got in Midsummer already. We then, from the window, pan around a room filled with like miniatures and crafting tools, like a lot of works in progress, and one of which is a house. And we zoom in on that little miniature house, and it focuses in on a bedroom that ends up becoming reality. So there's a lot of like slow zoom ins in this movie, and they look like they could be dollies, but I feel like they're just zooms, but I would have to be on set to prove that. But yeah, it's just a really cool transition into like this miniature world and then into the reality world. It's very cool. Very good transition.
The entire artistic aspect and cinematography of this because this is our very beginning of walking into the movie. The entire intro, it's just on another level for me. I mean, I did not study film. I just really love it. And so for all of the, the technicalities of everything, I'm just like, oh, it just looks so good. So good.
It really, it's a very, very cool, as we go through and you're watching all these different angles they're using and ways that they're, portraying the house and things. It's like, it's so creative. We went off last week about the creativity and how it blossoms in all of these movies, and it just continues. So this room that we zoom in on is Peter's bedroom, and his father is waking him up to bring him a suit, and then goes to get his sister, who we find out has slept in the treehouse, which is a habit. As we see the father, who is going to be Steve, walk out of the house and to the treehouse, we see a woman waiting in a car, who is Annie. So the daughter, Charlie, seems to be sleeping in the treehouse very often, and we see that I'm sorry, you wrote this down, and I don't want to mispronounce it. So
it's that.
We see that she has, I believe it's a genetic condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's cleidocranial dysplasia.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I should have done the research to find that, okay. So I appreciate you.
It's just because I'm in nursing major, so.
Heard, chef.
So we do love the representation, though, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, and the actress is phenomenal in every way. And we cut to a funeral, and the mother, Annie, is speaking, giving a eulogy. And so this is Ellen's funeral. So we just saw her obituary, now we're at the funeral. And Annie talks about how she's a very secretive person, and through that speech, we get the feeling that their relationship is very strained. Annie mentions that they haven't talked in a while, things like that. So definitely not, the perfect mother-daughter relationship. We see Charlie go up to the open casket, and the grandmother Ellen is wearing a necklace, the same one with the same symbol as Annie has on. And the music's very foreboding, and Charlie is clicking her tongue repeatedly, as if it's a tick or a stim of some sort, I imagine. Thank you for doing that.
I'm gonna freak myself out.
You're just gonna hear that at night. God forbid we stay in the room. I would never do that to you because it's on par with what one of my friends did to me in college. But I would just stand in a corner of a room, just make you piss yourself. That would be so mean. I'm not a mean pranker like that. So later at the funeral, Charlie sees someone putting something on her grandmother's corpse. It's like her lips or something.
Yeah.
And we very subtly find out that Charlie has a nut allergy. Like, Steve comes over and while Charlie's eating something, and he goes, that doesn't have nuts in it, right? And she goes, no, it doesn't. And, it brings attention to it. So, foreshadowing, if you will. Returning home, Annie says, like, it feels weird to be back home. Or, yeah, she, like, goes into just the feeling that she's not breaking down, she's not crying. And she says it feels weird that she's not reacting in the quote-unquote typical way, but everyone grieves differently, so there's no right or wrong or weird way that you grieve, as long as it's not bringing harm to yourself or others. And Annie paints and creates miniatures from her life, and we see her working on a new collection for an art show, and she's painting a scene of her mother in hospice. So it's kind of a therapeutic kind of activity as well, reliving these really sad moments throughout her life through creating them. So it's very interesting. Annie puts Charlie to bed and asks her like what she's drawn, because Charlie is kind of like a sketcher. She carries around a notebook and a pencil all the time, and she says that she drew her grandmother. Annie says that Charlie was always her favorite and kind of like possessive also of Charlie. And Charlie says that when she was younger, grandma always wanted her to be a boy. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Then Charlie asks who will take care of her when Annie dies, like her mom. And I'm like, I can't have children. I can't. If my kid were to come up to me and I'm saying goodnight to them, and I get it, like, obviously the death of a loved one would bring up these kinds of questions. Of course, it's only natural. But this is why I'm not equipped for this, because I would run right out and say, I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah.
No.
There's
for
not,
me.
I mean, there's no guidebook on how to address it, right? Because my own child will ask me, and within the context of this conversation, we just navigate it as we go. I mean, yeah.
No, I definitely said I would run just from the scariness of it, of a child just being like, what about when you die? And I'm like, no, not with you in the room. Bye. I would not be a comforting mother. I'm not having kids, and this is why. There you go. That's it. So Annie is reading this question as her daughter dealing with death, understandably so. And so she comforts her, which is like, yeah, good mom behavior.
Right.
Hell yeah. Annie looks like behind Charlie's head and sees the word Satony, Satony, written on the wall behind like Charlie's headboard, and does not inquire about it before leaving. You don't want to ask Charlie, did you do that? It's just asking. Like, not in the like what did you do to my walls way, but just like, hey, why did you write that?
Yeah. Like, I feel like this is where a red flag might start raising.
A little bit. Like, I get that kids draw on the walls. Like, it happens.
But if
writing
I saw that,
words like Satony?
Yeah. I'd be like, we need to discuss.
If Latin is brought into my home...
Yeah.
No Latin in my home.
Because
Even though my husband has Latin tattoos.
We don't know how old Charlie is at this point, right? We don't know her age.
I don't think so, but I imagined... She's got to be like a preteen.
Yeah.
Like 11, 12-ish, maybe.
Yeah.
And
I'd definitely be like, what do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Old enough that you can come at them with sort of an adult conversation.
Tell me your secrets.
Yeah. Annie enters her workshop and opens a box of her mother's things, then flips through a photo album and finds a book among all of this stuff titled Notes on Spiritualism, with a note inside. And my God. This note. I'm just going to read it verbatim. It says, "My darling, dear, beautiful Annie, forgive me all the things I could not tell you. Please don't hate me and try not to despair your losses. You will see in the end that they were worth it. Our sacrifice will pale next to the rewards. Love, Mommy." First of all, Mommy. But yeah, what do you mean? In the end, it's all worth it and don't hate you? Despair your losses? What? That is so ominous. Are you kidding? And yeah, just the note you want to see from your recently deceased parent.
I don't.
Gosh,
I think not.
I don't think so either. And Annie goes to leave the room and turns the lights off. And in the corner is a dark, ghostly form of her mother standing in like the very dark corner. And it's so creepy. So she turns the light back on and she's gone. So that's our first jump scare.
Yeah.
And oh my God.
It's just so subtly terrifying because there's no music. There's no music playing at that point either. It's just her in the corner.
Yeah. That's me in the corner.
Watching you kiss her.
So after our heart rates kind of settle back down a little bit, we now see a miniature scene facing Annie, so in the same moment, that depicts her as a new mother breastfeeding her baby while in bed, with her mom standing next to her, with her own boobie out, her own tit out and ready to assist, like as if like, come on, come drink up. It's like, it's been stated. I know shit fuck about raising a child or the complexities of breastfeeding, but that still doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah. So from someone that did do breastfeeding, it is such an intimate and personal experience. And this shot, like you just said, incredibly invasive situation. And I think because now we have the little reveal that Charlie was her grandma's favorite, we're getting a closer glimpse at just how invasive her grandmother was. And if that was me in that situation, I would have roundhoused her ass and been like, put your titty away, back up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, first of all, you're my mom.
Yeah.
Second of all, no, you can't breastfeed my child. No. And so cutting away to the next day, we are in school and Charlie's like messing with a toy under her desk instead of taking a quiz. And then a bird flies into the window and like shocking everybody else. And so the class is freaking out about it. Everyone's like looking at the window. Because right below the window are some bushes, and so the bird landed. The dead bird is now sitting on the bushes, and they're all looking at it. And while they're all doing that, Charlie is just eyeing these scissors on the table. And then we cut again. And so now we're with Peter, who is also in class and staring at a girl's butt, you know, as teenage boys do. While the teacher is like talking about the hero's flaws and hero's arrogance, you know, talking about the illusion of control, lack of choice, and Peter's just straight up not paying attention until he's called out. Relatable.
Yeah.
Who hasn't been like caught daydreaming in a class and been like called out, and then you feel like your heart goes out of your ass.
Yep.
Then we cut back to Charlie, who's now outside for recess, and she has brought the scissors with her and cuts the head off the dead bird and just pockets the head. Okay, she's a mysterious... she sees a mysterious woman. I was like, she's a mysterious woman. I'm like, well, she's just a kind of a weird kid from what we've seen just already. But Charlie sees a mysterious woman across the street who just like waves to her. And she's like, you can see her looking around like, hi?
And the woman's smiling too. I'd be like, you need to have a restraining order where you can't set foot near school property, lady.
Yeah, like I'm weird with smiling at cameras, especially since Smile came out. I personally was not a huge fan of the first Smile. Yeah. However, second Smile, not bad.
I haven't seen the second one. I've seen the first one, and then I had to go to Home Depot after I watched it, and I was freaked out.
See, I don't even know what it references. But yeah, like the second one was really good. I feel like they made better what they were attempting with the first one. And just the actress as well, the main actress, just is so freaking good at what she does that
I'm glad to hear that, because definitely when it ended, I was like, how I feel about that.
I was a very staunch, like, Smile hater. I'm like, I don't know why this movie is getting so much acclaim. It's not good. Yeah. Like, I don't understand. And then I was like, I'm not seeing the second one. Of course not. But then, obviously, the same kind of stuff went around, and then it was streaming for free, and I'm like, well, I got an afternoon. Might as well, yeah. And I was surprised. So,
okay, all right.
Yeah. There were a couple moments that genuinely creeped me out. And then one part towards the end that I found out they did practically. And I'll just leave it at that. That shocked me.
Okay.
That they actually pulled off some of these effects practically. And they looked as good as they did.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, so I would recommend. So cutting back to Annie after seeing Charlie snip the head off a bird. Annie's in her workshop and painting a replica laptop. And I never kind of zeroed in. That's why I love doing this already. Is that like I'm pausing these movies. I am looking at the details like I have never done before.
Same here.
And the replica laptop she's painting is pulled up with an article titled Norms on Discerning Presumed Apparitions, Methods of Communication. And I'm like, okay, is she like, was she actively looking that up because of what she saw with her mom in the corner? Is this something from her memory? Like, I just thought it was so cool. She hears Steve come home and walks down the hallway, and she's drawn to what was her mother's room with the door open. And they go back, so she goes and locks it. Then Peter answers the phone and brings it to Steve and says that the cemetery called. And it's like, it has been not very long since the funeral. So like, why are they calling? We find out that Ellen's grave was desecrated a week after the funeral. So it's been a week. And Annie tells him that she's going to see a movie. So Annie does not know at this point. And Steve just took this call privately when Annie asked what he was about, and he goes, oh yeah, it was some billing thing. Like, he waves it off and does not tell her. Because, yeah, that would be estranged relationship or not. I feel like it would be jarring to find out that a loved one's grave or a relative's grave was desecrated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't blame him for keeping that to himself.
Yeah.
Annie tells him that she's going to see a movie, and he, like, says, okay, I'll see you later. In reality, Annie's not going to the movies. She's going to a group grief recovery session. So having some alone time to herself to, go do that.
Yeah. And we're getting a glimpse that both Steve and Annie as partners, I feel like in this instance where he's not telling her about the phone call and she's not telling him that she's going to grief recovery, it's kind of like their way of preventing the other one from worrying, trying to protect each other. I found it a little reflective on the title of the laptop, even though obviously different calibers, but just methods of communication. I was like, maybe,
No, that's very true.
Reaching a little bit, but they're just kind of burying. Well, I think Annie's burying at this point. She's burying her grief. Yeah.
For sure. And during this meeting, she takes the opportunity to speak to the group. And this is where we find out her insanely, traumatic and awful past. We find out that she was estranged, but did love her mother. And she says that her mother had DID and dementia. Her father died when she was a baby from starvation due to psychotic depression. And she also had an older brother who died, who had schizophrenia and committed suicide at 18, leaving a note accusing his mother of putting people inside of him. So you can say that mental, struggles are a big part of her family. And this is she just pours all of this out at the group, and it's just in one long monologue, and it's wonderfully delivered. But yeah, it's just like you get a whole info dump on everything going on with Annie. We get a lot of background on her in that moment. And her mother lived with them towards the end, even though they weren't talking consistently. And she's makes a point to be like, it was weird that happened, but of course we had to let her stay with them. And she says she was manipulative, and this is previously to her, I believe, going no contact previous to her getting sick. So her mother was always very manipulative, and Steve forced her to go no contact. Yay, Steve. But that only lasted until Annie had Charlie. And then as soon as, her mother met Charlie, she sunk her hooks into her, as Annie says, and kind of never let go. So it's a very good wording to really get a sense of how this woman was. Just the phrasing of sunk her hooks into my child. It's like, gosh, there's such negativity, on top, packaged with that. Woof. And Annie says that she actually does blame herself for something, but she doesn't really know what for. And there's definitely something to be said about that. I mean, it's a hard position. I feel like I've felt that at some point or another, not related to death in any way, but just that feeling of I'm at fault for something. And Annie says that she blames herself for something, but she doesn't know what for. And I can only imagine the kind of spiraling that would do to your brain and your mental state.
Yeah. So, mental illness is also in my wheelhouse of experience. I've got experience from Midsummer with psychedelics and mind control and cult-like behavior, and now we get the other end of the spectrum. Makes me for one colorful horse.
There you go.
So, yeah, real quick, I just want to touch because we just got this giant info dump that it is apparent that Annie's family is full of mental illness, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we don't really get much more background than that, but just like as far as like schizophrenia goes, and I know, I'm speaking on my experience of my grandmother, the hallucinations that will come through with that, it's so tangible for someone that's in the midst of dealing with it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what Annie dealt with in growing up with all of these family members. We don't know what situations that she was put in. My grandmother loved to call the fire department. That was one of her favorite go-to, and say that the house was on fire. So when you are in a situation with someone, especially a loved one, you have to stay calm, and it's so hard not to freak out because you want to help them. So as far as Annie blaming herself and not knowing what for, I know that feeling so well. You're trying to rationalize in your brain, what am I not doing? How do I protect them? And at the end of the day, it's like sometimes there's nothing for you to do. So
Yeah.
I've felt that entire scene very hard, and I think that they delivered it very well.
Absolutely. They definitely did. And after this, we cut back to Peter, who is smoking a bowl in his room. Right on, my man.
As he should.
And making plans to go to a party the following night. Jesus. The next day, Charlie is once again making her clicking noises and is crafting something. We can only imagine. What?
Oh, yeah.
We see some kind of like glowing flash appear in her room, and she does notice it. And it reminds me of like the reflection off a mirror or like some reflective surface when you're driving and you get those like shiny bits in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of there.
I thought of Donnie Darko.
I see that. I've only watched that movie once and it scared me.
Did it?
I cannot do, what is it, Frank? I can't. It's so creepy.
But it's that wave of energy that comes out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought of. Shot me right back to it.
That's very true. Like, yeah, now I am remembering that part of it now. And yeah, for sure.
Frank's scary as hell. I watched that movie. Girl, I watched that movie in 7th grade. I had no business. I
watched that movie like within the last 5 years.
And Requiem for a Dream too. Those were my middle school. Oh yeah.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
Never will. My husband has seen it, and every time it's brought up, he's like, "No, I'm never gonna watch that movie again."
I don't.
You
blame
watch
him.
Watch it to learn the lesson when you're in like middle school, high school, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
And I was like, great. Well, I bought into Dare hard enough that I guess they didn't feel it was warranted for me.
Yeah, in middle school I watched those. I had no business.
No, middle school they showed us like Dante's Peak, which like
I don't know if I've seen that.
I
don't know if I've seen that. What is that?
It wouldn't fit. It's a volcano movie starring Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, okay.
And it is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a town that is like built on the base of this mountain that they find out is a volcano, and they're like, well, it's dormant, it's not going to do anything, but Pierce Brosnan's a volcanologist, or whatever the scientific name is.
Mm-hmm.
And he essentially like camps out in the town, and is like, I need to make sure that this is not going to happen. He has an inkling that the volcano's going to explode. Mm-hmm. Guess what, everybody? The volcano explodes. And there's one shot in particular or two very traumatic scenes in that I remember watching that in 7th grade and even 6th grade and just looking at the TV that had rolled in and looking at that, I'm just like, I don't think we should be watching this. Are we allowed to see this?
I love you, Megan, so much.
I am the oldest of 3 girls. I was heavily sheltered as a child. My parents went to the extent to not show me the first, but this is also where I was sheltered, but very mixed signals because, and I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but I don't even care.
It's okay.
So growing up in the 90s, my parents had Titanic on the 2 VHSs, and they let me watch the second VHS, but not the first, because God forbid I see a woman of my own gender. I see her tits. God forbid I see breasts.
Second VHS is so much worse.
I know. They didn't want me to see boobs. They didn't want me to see the hand on the window implying sex, which I wouldn't have known what the fuck that was anyway. And instead said, no, watch this tragedy of everybody on this fucking ship die. And then I got obsessed with the Titanic.
My Titanic experience, we also had it on VHS, and I was with my said mentally ill grandparents who were watching me after school while my mom was at work. And I was watching it, and I with them and finishing it out. And my mom came home, and she was like, "What are you watching?" And I was a sobbing mess. I was like, "You can't ever go on a boat. You're gonna die." And I too now have an obsession with Titanic. We may have to squeeze that in here somehow. We may have to umbrella it somehow.
We'll stretch it and try to fit it.
Because it is tragic. It is scary.
Yeah, definitely watching it as an adult with a fear of open water now, it's fucking terrifying.
It is.
Like, with a heavy fear of claustrophobia. I have claustrophobia.
Mhm.
I hate open water. Like, you won't find me on a cruise ever again. The last cruise I went on, probably like 8 years ago. I remember there was one night I was up really late and I went out to one of the decks just to walk around, and I looked out the ship into nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it clicked. And it said,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is going to freak you out from now on."
That's
because
understandable.
If you just went over, no one would ever find you. And I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. So river cruises from me now on. Just river cruises. Land on both sides, please.
Completely understandable.
Yeah, scared the shit out of me. So now that we've gotten back on track, or trying to.
Yep.
Annie receives an email asking for an update about her show, the art show, which she definitely appears to be ignoring. And Charlie walks outside carrying her pigeon head, just walking around with her little friend.
Yep.
And Peter asks Annie if he can use the car after dinner to go to a, quote, school barbecue after dinner,
Quote,
aka party.
Mm-hmm.
And Annie even tries to be like, well, no one's drinking, right? And he tries to do the like, well, I mean, even if we wanted to, we couldn't get it. We're not of age. And she's like, that's not what I asked, fuckhead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you just no drinking, okay? Like, I'm not stupid. But also, you're stupid enough to then tell him that, hey, why don't you ask Charlie to come? What? So you understand that there is going to be underage drinking here. She's just making sure that he's not drinking. And yet, she still tells him, bring your sister. So this also makes me think that maybe she's like 13, 14.
Yeah.
And they're kind of closer in age.
Yeah, because I feel like if she was any younger than 10 or even at 10, why would she, No
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like she's probably like the 14-ish range. And it's like, oh, it's a school thing. And so she's like, okay.
And I noted, now granted, I know it's an A24 film, but still, even for this it's about family, I picked up on Annie and Peter's tension, like a very slim layer of tension between them. She just seems like very exasperated with him as he's asking to go. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, why is she so put out with him?
Yeah. And like a part of me is like, is there more underlying detail there? Or is it like he's just a teenager?
Right.
And you get that way. Like,
yeah.
we don't know, but the tension is there.
Yeah, it was
absolutely there. And so Charlie's like walking around outside the house, and in the distance, she spots what appears to be an older woman sitting on the ground with like fire burning around her. And then Annie finds Charlie and just takes her back inside, telling her, oh, hey, you're going to go with Peter to this party. And then she scolds her about not having any shoes on. So Charlie also walks around without shoes. So, kids, I guess, teens, they do weird things. So we are now in the car with Peter and Charlie, and the shot passes a telephone pole that has a symbol carved into it, the same one that was on Annie and Ellen's necklaces. And the party is literally exactly what you think. It's your typical high school party. There's red Solo cups everywhere. But then there's a girl chopping nuts in the kitchen, like, chaotically. And they look like walnuts. She's just... I'm like, you're gonna cut off a finger. And also, just like, what high school is serving walnuts at their party? Like, this house is definitely nice, and they're probably rich, so I guess you could chalk it up to, like, rich people things.
Why are you
but,
chopping nuts?
If I didn't go to high school parties. If it wasn't clear, I was kind of a nerd and a bit like a drama geek, and I didn't have the popular friends. And, like, if I had walked into a high school party and I saw someone chopping walnuts, I feel like I'd want to go.
I can promise you they were chopping everything except nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, so that threw me off right off the bat. I'm like, okay, odd choice, but I understand why it's needed.
Yeah.
I just wish that it had been integrated a little bit, not as in your face and weird. It was very aggressive. She's going ham on these things. So back at their house, another miniature we see is depicting Annie's mother standing in, like, Annie's bedroom doorway. And I continue to ask, what kind of art show is this?
Yeah.
Is it about her mom? Like, did
Right.
she start this when her mom was in hospice and this is her way of coping? Like, which is totally fine.
Well, we don't have any context. Like, we don't know
context.
we don't know what the company is. We don't know. Yeah. So we're just like, okay, processing grief, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And then Peter hits on the girl from his class that he was looking at her butt the other day. And he pulls out of his jacket, he pulls out this baggie of weed. And he's like, I got this really good weed.
And it's not just like a gram. It's like an ounce.
Yeah, he brought it. Like, I'm like, okay, realistically, you probably would have had a nug.
Yeah.
Like, you would have had a little nuggie. So he, like, says, hey, I got some really good weed, you want to go smoke it? And she goes, yeah, obviously. And so he leaves his little sister to fend for herself at a party where she knows nobody, and tells her to go get some cake. And so she's like, all right, I guess. So then we cut to a little bit later as she's, like, eating the cake, and we see, like, she's starting to get hives on her face and making kind of, like, wincing faces. Like, she's uncomfortable. Then in the bedroom, they're packing a bowl, and he ignores a call from his mom. And then cut back to Charlie, and she's clearly struggling to breathe, and he is smoking in the other room. And then she just comes into the room and starts wheezing. And it's like, fuck.
You remember the funeral when Steve was like, no nuts? And they mentioned an EpiPen? Do we think that this might have something to do?
No one made sure that she had her EpiPen?
Hello?
Leaving the home? Going to a strange place? I don't have severe allergies, but my cousins have had nut allergies for quite a long time. They never went anywhere without that shit.
Yeah.
And I like, nut allergies are no joke. I know that much.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You do not fuck with nut allergies.
From working in daycare and working with children, you know, we all had to be certified on how to administer. And it's very serious, because there's people that are, if it's even in the air, which we saw the girl aggressively chopping nuts.
That shit was in the air.
But yeah, and we have friends that are severely allergic too, and then their kids are allergic also. It's like they can't even, you know. Yeah.
I remember in high school, there was a girl that enrolled who was so allergic to latex that we couldn't have latex balloons anymore.
Yeah.
At any events, just because, like, coming into any kind of contact, it would be, like, deadly. So yeah, you don't fuck with allergies.
Yeah.
But he's a teenager. She's an even younger teenager. Obviously, it's not going to be front of mind.
Yeah.
So he jumps into action and gets her to the car to, like, drive to get her help instead of calling 911. And which I can I could maybe understand or see it happening if they were like, no, you can't call 911, we're drinking, like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, emergency services don't give a fuck about that. And so they speed off onto, like, this very unlit side road of the countryside. And where the fuck was this party? And I think I did read that it's set in, like, one of the Midwestern states, so not Colorado. I think they filmed in Utah, so, like, one of the states out there that's very mountainous, very barren, and all that.
Street lighting at all.
Nothing. So it was like, I'm like, where's the party? So it only then furthers, like, okay, it's probably a rich kid if they live all the way out here.
Yeah.
And then I start wondering about districting, and now we're getting into way off base. Like, my mom worked in the school system, and has talked about redistricting in the past and all this, so it's on top of mind. And I'm like, oh god, don't make me go there. And this scene is, like, hard to watch.
It is.
Charlie's clawing at the back, like at her throat, trying to get air down. And it always just makes me so tense and want to go get my inhaler when I see scenes like this. It's just like we're going to have to do Shyamalan at some point. We got to do a Shyamalan series because it reminds me of Signs.
Yes.
When the Culkin starts having
Yep.
his asthma attack, and it just, the same thing in World War Z.
Yep.
Like, just any asthma attack that's done very well,
I had a hyperfixation with Signs for a very long time. I have seen that movie so many times.
That movie is so, like, substantial to my horror history.
Yeah.
Like, it changed so much for me. I don't know where the picture is. It exists somewhere. I think my old friend has it, but a girl that I was close with in elementary school, elementary school.
Yeah.
Maybe 6th grade.
Yeah. That sounds about
came
right.
Came over to watch it, and we both wore our tinfoil hats.
I'm losing my mind.
Oh, yes. I'm raging with anger.
Okay,
yeah, we're gonna have to do.
Okay,
we gotta do Signs at some point.
Oh yeah, we'll do
the
Village,
Village, all of them.
Signs in the
so
Village
good.
for sure.
They're so good. Not all of them, but some of them are so good. So yeah, Charlie's clawing at her throat. She opens the window to put her head out, and then Peter sees a dead animal in the road and swerves to avoid it, which causes Charlie's head to collide with the telephone pole that we saw earlier and is decapitated. And it is so sudden and shocking. And it is worth noting that Charlie's death was not hinted at whatsoever in the marketing for this movie. Like, there was we had zero clue that she was gonna die.
I think at this point, we're 20 minutes into the movie?
We're pretty early on. Yeah. It's shocking.
It's a hard scene. For anyone that hasn't watched this movie but is considering watching it now, this is your trigger warning for it.
And so Peter sits there stunned and in shock and denial. Like, he knows what just happened because Charlie is no longer responding to him. And so he doesn't look back, doesn't get out of the car. He just slowly drives away, leaving her head on the side of the road. Arriving back home, he simply parks the car and walks in the door and goes to bed. So, like, definitely in shock, seeing as he left the headless body of his little sister in the backseat. So we hear Annie and Steve kind of like take a sigh of relief, being like, oh, they made it home, thank God. And you know that Peter hears that too. And it's just, oh God, Peter. I feel for Peter so fucking bad.
I do too.
And then it transitions. We're on Peter's face in the dark, and then it transitions to light the next morning. He did not sleep. He's just straight up staring off into nothing. And we stay on his face as in the background we hear Annie say like, oh, I'm going on a run, be back in 20 minutes. And we know what she's about to find. So we are just clenched and just waiting to hear it. We talked last week about Florence Pugh's scream and how gut-wrenching it is. Now we'd like to introduce you to Toni Collette's performance in Screaming, because it is awful, like, in the most well-performed way. Like, mother losing their child screams in movies will always give me chills, but, like, Toni Collette deserves everything for this movie, and it starts immediately right here. Like, I always get chills, I always get teary-eyed. It's gut-wrenching.
She literally captures the absolute feral and guttural scream from the pure depths of motherhood, which is something that's only accessed in a situation like this. Yeah.
God, yeah. And so the camera, as we're hearing this, cuts to Charlie's head, and it's like covered in bugs and like bloody and just not, it wasn't gonna be pretty. And we hear Annie continuing to like cry and scream over the loss. She's saying that she wants to die. It's really hard not to shed a tear from this, and it's like her and Steve on the floor, and he's just doing everything he can to try to hold her, but she's like rocking and moving, and she just can't stay still, and she's flailing and just like, I want to die. It's, oh my God.
And
it's
he's just,
hard.
He's so steady though. He's so steady. Like, we do not see through this whole sequence. We don't see him lose his temper once, not at the funeral, not at this. He's just stoic.
Yes. And we haven't really said it yet, but Peter is a psychiatrist or psychologist, one of the two. And so Peter is then, so as we pan kind of from their bedroom and that scene, we pan over and see Peter standing in the hallway in the dark. And he's just standing there by himself, feeling, I don't even fucking know what. All of the bad things. Then we cut again to the burial. Annie is continuing to just sob to the point like she's going after the casket as it's getting dropped in. Like, oh my God. It's the like it I don't even know how many minutes. It's gotta be at least 2 minutes of her just going. And it's fucking sticks with you. So back at the house after the post funeral reception is the best terminology I could like create for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve is locking up after everyone has left and then goes up to like check on Annie, sees that she's not laying in her bed anymore. And then the camera cuts to a word carved in the wall again. This time it's called Zazas. Zazas.
Mm-hmm.
So yet again, what the fuck is this?
Mm-hmm.
We then see Peter and he goes to sleep and turns the lights off, then looks out his window to see the treehouse. So he can see the treehouse from his window. And then we see a red light appear inside. Then we cut over to Steve, and he is sitting in Charlie's room and kind of flipping through her drawings and, having a moment to himself to kind of break down.
Mm-hmm.
We cut back and see that Annie is sleeping in the treehouse with heat lamps. So that's where the red light's coming from. So she's obviously trying to get closer to Charlie in that way.
Yeah.
And Peter then the next day is back at school for some reason and is dissociating hard. Granted, we don't know if it's the next day or if it's like there's been some time. We're not really sure, but we can imagine so.
Yeah.
I like to think it's been a little bit of time that they wouldn't send him back to school immediately. Later that day, he's out skipping class with friends and smoking weed under the bleachers, and then he starts having a panic attack and says that his throat feels like it's getting bigger, which is exactly what Charlie said to him at the party when he saw her, like, struggling to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays this insanely well.
He does.
Like, I've had a panic attack after smoking once, and it looked very much like that. Very well done.
Yeah. The shot that transitions from the classroom, I guess it's out to this. Maybe it was like right before this, but where he looks up and he's like looking in the rear view mirror and then it transitions to the bleachers. Is that at this part?
Maybe?
He's sitting in class and he's like dissociating and he looks up and sees the rear view.
Yes, you're
and
right.
then it so then it transitions into him smoking. I just thought that shot was so cool, kind of like how you brought up in Midsummer, the airplane shot.
Mm-hmm.
I just love it so much. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's a really great like manifestation of his like how he's struggling to cope, especially with his guilt and mixed with that grief. So yeah, him seeing that rearview mirror is a big signal of that.
Yeah.
So later that night, when Peter's getting home, Annie is sitting in the driver's seat of the car. She's just sitting there.
Yeah.
And she watches Peter get home on his bike, watches him go in the house, and then as soon as he's inside, she starts the car and leaves. And drives to the grief group. And this was like a very eerie, so like it's more of that tension, but it's very much heightened at this point.
It's like palpable at this point.
Yeah, I can't imagine
like her sitting in the car, and the first time I watched it, I thought that she was asleep. Like I thought that she was just sleeping in the car. But then when she drives off immediately, I was like, Annie's clearly avoiding him. She's not wanting to be at the house. But then we also get to see him right before he walks in the house. You see him like shake his arms a little bit and hype himself up. So that's just another dynamic that's at play here. More grief.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we see Annie parked at the grief group and is about to leave. So she starts her car and starts driving away, and then a woman flags her down. And if you've seen Handmaid's Tale, this is Aunt Lydia.
Lydia, what are you doing here?
What are you doing here? You can totally only be here for good reasons.
Yeah.
So she introduces herself as Joan, and Annie tells her that she lost her daughter. And Joan responds saying that her son and grandson just drowned a few months ago. So she gives Annie her phone number, saying like, hey, if you ever need someone to talk to, here's my number. And then Annie leaves. So getting home, Steve is there trying to comfort her, and she lies to him, telling him that she went to the movies, and then just leaves to go out to the treehouse. And I was just watching American Psycho today, and now I'm just like, I have to go return some videotapes. Is all I can think of. Whenever I think of her saying I have to go to the movies, it's like, I have to go return some videotapes. I'm going to start using that as an excuse to not go to things. It's going to leave people baffled.
Let me check out your business card.
Yeah, ooh. I don't got one. It's Bone. That movie's so... We gotta do that one too at some point.
Yeah.
So Steve is supporting and understanding here. So like they're getting ready to go to bed together, and she just kind of gets up, doesn't even get into bed, and says, I'm going to the treehouse. And he is just kind of like, okay, I love you. And we love Steve. We love Steve so much. So cutting to Peter, who is laying awake in his bed. He's looking out at the treehouse again, and then he hears the clicking noise that Charlie would make again. So, oh, that was a bad one. You go.
What?
You gotta have the hollowness in it. You gotta see, like, it's, yeah.
I can't get it.
It's like you drop your jaw open, I think.
Yeah.
It's like a...
Okay. I'll leave that for
I don't
you.
know, just to hear, like, just because then you get, like, I don't know. There's nuances to it.
Yeah.
I don't want to I'm bad-mouthing your clicking noises, actually.
Mine's more like a velociraptor click.
Ah, yeah, there we go. Save that for the Jurassic Park series, you know? And so he sits up. We don't see anything in the dark, but he hears it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we cut again, and Annie is working on her minis and looks at a post-it note that says, call the gallery, about extending her deadline. Which is like, yeah, girl, both your mother and daughter have both died within weeks of each other. They'll give you an extension.
Yeah.
And instead, she sees Joan's phone number, and we cut to Annie walking up to Joan's apartment building and taking note of the welcome mat. She kind of looks at it and it's like, huh. She mentions that Ellen used to embroider mats just like that. What a small world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if it's something handmade, small world doesn't really cut it.
Yeah.
That specific?
Because what are the odds this woman just ran up to you in a parking lot and said, hey, here's my number. You show up at her house and there's a mat.
Yeah. Interesting. Annie is describing finding Charlie's body, so we've cut a little bit. And then she takes a pill while Joan just simply is listening. And then Annie asks about her son.
Yeah. And she also, I noticed when she's Joan gives her like a cup of tea and she's sipping it and she wipes this like black speck off of her mouth. So it was like, is your dishes dirty? Like,
notice that.
It's like very faint. She like sips it and then like pulls something off. It's like a tiny like black speck. I don't know if it's significant, but they shoot the angle focusing on it. So I'm like, oh, this must be important.
Weird. I didn't even notice that. Annie tells Joan that she sleepwalks, and a couple of years ago, this is fucking wild.
Mm-hmm.
A couple years ago, she was standing next to Peter and Charlie's bed, so back when they shared the same room, and she apparently had covered them both, including herself, in paint thinner, and woke up to herself lighting a match, and Peter wakes up at that same moment as well. So he was traumatized, and it's pretty hard to convince them that it was just sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Like, that, I know sleepwalking can range, like, from Step Brothers' version of sleepwalking, where they're, trashing a kitchen. There's people that will try to leave their house. Like, it ranges. But, like, trying to set your kids on fire?
Yeah.
And then, it's hard to move past the visual of your mom looking like she was about to kill you and set you on fire. Yeah. So we kind of get more background as to why relations may be strained between her and Peter. Cutting back to the house, Steve tells Peter, like, oh, you gotta remember to sign up for that SAT prep course. And damn, did that bring back some memories. Fuck. I hated the SAT prep shit.
It was horrible.
Oh, it was awful. But he's pretty much ignored. So Steve goes to see Annie, who's in her workshop, this time painting a miniature of Charlie's death. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit morbid. Like, we listen and we don't judge.
But she does like the full telephone pole. It's a big
it's a
big
thing.
Exhibit.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not even just the car sitting there. Like, there's a blood trail next to her little miniature head with the miniature body. Like, it's oof. And Steve is a bit skeptical, being like, make sure Peter doesn't see this shit.
Yeah.
And Annie's like, why? It's not about him. It's like, he was the one driving the car, so we can assume that he may feel responsible for this.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And Steve's clearly getting frustrated with Annie and her being kind of this absent presence in their lives at this point. He kind of tells her offhand, like, I cooked dinner, whether you come down or not, I don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly she's either locking herself away with work or going to the movies, whenever, or yeah. So she's definitely not around very much. Whether that means physically or not, that we don't really get to see, but could maybe assume. So cut to dinner, and there's a very awkward silence, and we are about to get one of the best monologues in history. Peter sees that Annie is pretty irritated and asks his mom if she's okay. It seems like she wants to say something. And he's like, I've been waiting for you to say something. Like, I've been waiting for you to yell at me. Like, he tells her, release him. He says, just fucking say it. So he knows what she wants to say. And so that's what this tension's been about. It's like, yeah, she's been avoiding you because of what you're about to find out. And so would you like to read this, or do you want me to read it?
You go for it.
Okay. I'm not going to perform. I could never perform this the way Toni Collette performs this. So it begins. Don't you swear at me, you little shit. Don't you ever raise your voice at me. I am your mother. You understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you. And all I get back is that fucking face on your face. So full of disdain and resentment and always so annoyed. Well, now your sister's dead. And I know you miss her, and I know it was an accident, and I know you're in pain, and I wish I could take that away from you. I wish I could shield you from the knowledge that you did what you did, but your sister is dead. She's gone forever, and what a waste. If it could have maybe brought us together or something. If you could have just said, I'm sorry, or faced up to what happened. Maybe then we could do something with this. But you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept and I can't forgive because nobody admits anything they've done. And damn.
I can hear it. I can hear it verbatim.
I could also hear it from me. But yeah, it's so good. It's just such a good, well-written monologue of her expressing that anger, but also trying to be a mom, being like, you are my child, and I know that you are in pain. I don't want that for you, but it is what it is. This is what happened. And just what a waste is what gets me. It didn't bring them together. It just forced them apart. But she then still goes back on him saying, if you could have just said, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she's like, nobody admits anything they've done. And you wonder if that's coming from both Peter as well as maybe her mother. Yeah. Given that letter we saw, rather.
And everyone processes grief differently. And, that the kettle finally let it all out.
Yeah, that she did. So Peter says, well, Charlie didn't want to go to the party anyway. She only went because Annie made her. And Steve's just like, okay, I'm calling this. I'm stepping in. Yeah. And so Annie just kind of storms away and leaves the table. Mm-hmm. And then Peter and Steve sit at the table in silence. And Steve just tries to be a comforting dad while handling it all himself. He is grieving too. It's his children too. But he's also trying to still be the strong, comforting dad and take on the weight that Annie is trying to carry herself, and just, he's such a good husband and dad. Yes. So the next day, Annie is out buying supplies for her art, and we get a little Easter egg. Mm-hmm. So we just covered Midsummer. And if you watch that movie, you know what Danny and Christian look like. And so the couple that passes Annie in this scene look very eerily similar to Danny and Christian. They do. And not necessarily in we don't see their faces, but it's a shorter blonde girl wearing regular clothes and a taller, short-haired brunette gentleman. Mm-hmm. Looking very similar. Very similar. Yep. So while this came out technically, before? Yeah, because Midsummer, I think, was 2019. Yeah. So, was it Ari Aster just sprinkling a little thing in there? Was it just a coincidence? Are they connected? Same universe? Who knows? So Annie spots Joan in the parking lot, weirdly enough. And Joan's like, oh, I'm doing so good, Annie. And it's like, I'm so fucking happy for you, Joan.
She's like manically happy.
Yeah. And she says, like, oh my gosh, something happened that just turned everything around. I gotta tell you about this new thing. And immediately I'm like,
right.
No.
Don't sell me on your MLM company. I don't want to sell essential oils.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell Mary Kay.
That's a throwback. Oh my God. Joan says that she met a spiritual medium who performed a seance. And she's like, oh, it was in front of scientists and scholars, so it was legitimate. And she says afterwards, Joan was like so enthralled by this that the medium came to her apartment and conjured her grandson. And Annie's just like, I can't fucking believe this shit. Like,
yeah.
Nah. And Joan's like, I know how it sounds, but it's totally real. Come over and I'll show you. And I'd be like, I just met you. No. And also, just some medium just teaching randos how to conjure spirits doesn't sound very reputable to me. Like, I know a few of our people in our book club dabble in like, you know, maybe not summoning or anything like that, but they're like spiritual in this way. And like, they would never. If they knew how to do that, they would. And if they do know how to do that, they're not advertising it.
No. There is every single red flag around this entire interaction for that realm, and I will save my 2 cents for later, but holy shit. Oh my God.
I'm so looking forward to you going off about I can't wait. Annie goes back to her apartment and they both sit at a table that has one single candle lit on it, and they place their hands on an empty glass while Joan calls out to her grandson, telling them to like, come see me, slide the glass, and it moves. And Annie's like, what the fuck? She starts freaking out, especially when Joan brings out a chalkboard along with some chalk, and then watches something, her grandkid, write, I love you. And Annie is just shaken. She's like, I want to go. I want to get out of here. And Joan is still pushing it on her, and she's like, oh no, here's instructions if you want to try it on your own. We don't practice mystical or unknown things without proper education, okay?
This is cool. like sail ship size red flags at this point.
Baffling. I was like, this is absolutely insane. And then before she leaves, Joan tells Annie, you didn't kill her. She's not gone.
And we did get a nice one of those reflection shots again right here, which I love.
We love them. Every detail is good.
I know.
So Annie in the car on her way home, she now hears Charlie's clicking. So it's following everybody. And cutting to that night, Annie is unable to sleep, and then she sees ants that are like crawling around in their bed, and it's like, ew, gross. I would be up so fast. Like, she doesn't wake up, Steve. She's just like, oh, that's so weird. The way I would spring out of my bed and start stripping and just wake ends up with my screaming. So she sees and like follows them and sees that they're coming from a window, but there's a trail of them leading through the house. Getting out of the bed, she follows the trail out of her room and down the hallway to Peter's room. And they are crawling all over his face. And I tried really hard to see if this was real, like practical, like if Alex Wolff was laying there with ants all over his face, but I feel like it was a dummy and they put ants on the dummy. I couldn't find anything about it, so I have a feeling it was not noteworthy in that way then. So Annie then wakes up and she's sleepwalking, then asks if Charlie's there. And then Peter wakes up and she's like, why are you scared of me? And then she tells him she never wanted to be his mother because she was scared. What the fuck?
It's very unsettling.
Very. And to like tell your son this too, like after she just screamed at him at dinner, like, oh my God. And Annie goes on saying that her mother pressured her and says that she tried to stop it and tried to have a miscarriage. So then Peter starts freaking out, crying, asking, why did you try to kill me? And then like they both start to appear really wet, and then a fire starts, and then she actually wakes up back in bed. Ooh, terrifying.
Because like in that instance, even though it was a dream, she's like finally being honest at the bottom of everything. Not only is she like holding everything back on, how she feels about Charlie dying. But now we've got more lore, essentially, on why that sliver of tension that we picked up on at the very beginning about the party is there. Her subconscious is fucking rough, dude.
Yeah.
For her to have the inception dream
Yeah.
within,
No, for sure. She's got a lot of shit going on. And she then later, after she just wakes up this moment, she enthusiastically wakes up Peter and Steve, telling them like, "Oh, come downstairs, come downstairs." It's an impromptu middle of the night seance time.
Yeah. Yay!
With middle of the night seance time with the fam, as you do. And not explaining literally anything. She's just jazzed up and fired up. She is just chaotic as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just pleading with them and gets them to listen to her as she tells them, "Hey, I'm a medium. When the fuck did you figure, when did that come in here? Okay.
I got a candle and a sheet of paper. I'm a medium."
Yeah. And then she convinces them to try conjuring Charlie together. So they all join hands, and both Peter and Steve are standing there like, what the fuck? Like, okay. Yeah. And Annie starts calling out to Charlie, and then Peter hears like creaking wood behind him, so he's looking behind him like, what the hell's happening? And then she's like, "Everyone put your hands on the glass." And then Peter's like, "Don't you feel that? The air is pulsing." And then the glass moves. So Annie starts to get frantic as Steve tries to like tell her to stop. He's like, "This is enough. I'm done. Like, we can't, this is insane."
Yeah.
And then Peter starts freaking out. And then something flies across the room and the flame from the candle ignites on its own. So they all freeze. And then we see Annie, whose like head is just down like this, and she starts growling. And then she starts talking in Charlie's voice, yelling out like, "Hello? What's going on? I'm scared. What is this?" And then there's some really cool vocal distortions where you can kind of hear both voices at once, fading one into the other.
Yeah.
And she just starts getting more and more worked up. She calls Peter by name. She's like, "Peter, where's mom? Where's mom? I'm scared." And then Steve just comes up behind her and throws water on her face as Peter starts to have a full fucking breakdown. And she snaps out of it and is just like, "What the hell?" And they're just like both standing there like, "What do you mean, what the hell? What the fuck did you just do?"
Yeah.
And so she has no idea what just happened.
This is a step through, word for word, what not to do, all in one scene.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you were ever thinking about trying to do this on your own before, or do this at all before.
Do not do what they did in this movie.
I hope this has steered you away from that, because damn.
Let us be your spooky fairy godmothers.
There you go. Yes. Don't play with Ouija boards, and don't play with summoning spells.
Don't do it. Okay.
We see the small miniature of the accident again, so we've cut away from the whole nighttime seance, but now we see that the head is missing. Cool. And on Peter's wall now, there are 2 more words written, Liftoch and Pandemonium. Okay. The next day in class, he's sitting there, not really paying attention, and sees a reflection on the ground. The same, energy beam, I don't know, that Charlie had seen previously. And it's like moving very erratically. It jumps onto the ceiling, it spreads out, moves over the room, and then lands on the cabinet next to Peter. And he looks to the glass, and we see his reflection staring back at him, smiling. Oh,
it's very creepy.
Like, we talked about smile and all that. This is the kind of smiling stuff that gets me. It's like if it's your own reflection and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Reflective things, those get me. And then Peter starts to hear the clicking from Charlie, and abruptly is like, "I have to go to the bathroom," and then leaves. So Annie now gets a call from Steve, who's back at the house, saying that Peter called him. So Annie's back at the house, I should say. Steve's at work, and he says that Peter called him in hysterics, thinking that he's being threatened by a vengeful spirit. I would take that seriously, given what just happened.
Especially, as far as we know, this kid has no context or like experience with that. So for him to call that out directly is like, you might want to listen to him.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve says, "Well, I have a son to protect. And then that throws Annie off because she's like, it's my son too. And then Steve hangs up, and then she calls him back saying like, I'm not sleepwalking anymore. I don't know what you're like doing this for. So they're starting to have some like animosity towards each other, and they're starting to kind of get upset with each other because Steve is being protective of his son. He sees how Annie is treating him in a way and how she's like verbally abusing him at times.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just trying to do what he can for his son because now he's starting to believe that he has spirits after him. And in any other movie, the parent in this situation would be like, our son needs some testing or whatever. They're just saying that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This time Steve is like, I actually study this psychology. I know this.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you doing? We're stopping this. Like, responsible man. And then another call goes through that goes to voicemail, and it's the art gallery sending well wishes and saying that they can absolutely postpone the date of Annie's show. And then that causes Annie to break apart the current scene, which is that she's working on, which is her mom's funeral. And so she just breaks. And this is one aspect of this movie that I have been still having trouble to this day pinpointing what sets her off about this. Like, I don't know if I'm sure it's connected to her grief, but I don't know if it's a thing of like, is she scared of postponing it because it's like fear of failure? Is it like not wanting to confront the fact that she needs more time to like grieve her mother? Like it's one part that I'm still trying to piece together.
I would agree with the latter of what you said about the time of her feeling rushed because her working on this set that is obviously about her mother, it's like the last piece of holding on until she has to confront it.
Very true. And so now Peter and Steve get home, and Steve goes upstairs to see the absolutely wrecked workshop, and Annie is sitting on the floor. All she says is she couldn't look at it anymore. But one set remains untouched, and it's of Peter's room. And there's a headless figure laying in the bed. Whether it's Peter's room or Charlie's room, I am unsure. I want to say it's Charlie's room because it would make more sense that way. But it also is set up as if it's Peter's room. So I was unsure of that bit. But
it's very unsettling.
It's a headless figure. Yeah, unsettling.
And one of your...
No matter...
You put a headless figure in one of your children's bedrooms.
Yeah, that alone. Doesn't matter who it belonged to. And so we cut, and Steve is now shown sleeping on the couch. So relations have further become strained between him and Annie. And later that night, Annie's awake and hears a scratching noise. No, thank you. Mm-hmm. Following it, she goes into Charlie's room and sees her notebook open on the bed, and an unseen force is like drawing on the pages. And we cut back to Peter, who's asleep in bed, and he wakes up to the clicking sound. And then he sees Charlie in the corner of his room, in the same way that Annie saw her mother in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And so he sits up and is like, Charlie? And then her head, like, falls like that, like, just kind of falls as if she's, like, falling asleep or something. But instead, the head drops and a ball rolls out from the corner. Beautiful transition.
Oh, absolutely. Seamless.
Also, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Terrifying. Because it's, like, it's still scary because it's a random ball rolling towards you, but it's also, like, you're preparing to see a head, but instead it's just a ball.
A ball. Yeah.
And now we hear their dog, because they do have a dog, and it's in the room growling at something. It's growling at Peter. Mm-hmm. Then out of nowhere, two hands come from behind the headboard and start grabbing onto his face as the door slams in the dog's face, and we hear him give a little yelp, and my heart hurt from that.
Yeah.
And so that's, first of all, terrifying. That's one of my nightmares is like something grabbing me from under my bed. I hate it. And we briefly see the living room where Steve sleeps undisturbed as Annie is now in Peter's room. And he told her, like, he's freaking out, being like, you were pulling on my head. I saw Charlie in the room. Like,
what is going
what's
on?
What's happening? Yeah. And so Annie confirms, she's like, listen, something's happening. I'm the only one that can fix it. Do not tell your father this happened.
Well, at least the alarms are finally going off.
Very true. At least she's coming too, and she's like, oh, it's going after my son.
Right.
Got it. Okay. So we see the sketches that have been drawn by the spirit in Charlie's notebook, and they're all of Peter crying with his eyes crossed out. So no wonder she just told him to be like, don't say anything to your dad because I'm also not telling you about the shit I just saw.
No one say anything.
Yeah, no one talk about anything.
Yeah.
Always works. So now we cut, and Annie's in the living room, and she starts a fire in the fireplace, and then tosses the notebook in. So as it starts to catch fire, we see her arm catch fire. So she takes the notebook out, and it stops burning on her arm as the notebook stops burning. So we see that she is connected to the notebook. Congratulations. You're connected to an inanimate object.
Yeah, we're getting some what appears to be some written magic, which is another whole nother ball game.
Okay. So the next day, everyone leaves the house, and Annie marches back to Joan's apartment. She's, like, still in her pajamas also. She's, like, in a robe and, like, sweatpants. She is not dressed to really be roaming around.
Yeah,
I guess you
she's
roam
not-
around in whatever you want.
She's not doing real hot.
Yeah, it's a clue of, like, just how unraveled she's really starting to become. So she goes back to Joan's apartment, and no one's home, but inside we see, like, draping and candles are all lit around, and there's a table with a symbol carved into it. And Peter's picture is in the center, surrounded by some special items.
Yay!
Yay! So Peter is now at school eating lunch outside, which, lucky. Okay. And he hears someone calling his name. So he looks across the street, and there's Joan yelling, "I expel you. Xantony, Dagdany, Paragon, get out." And he looks around like,
The fuck?
Anybody else see this? Hear
You
this?
talking to
Just me? What's going on? Because she is yelling like, Peter!
Yeah.
And like, but I no fucking idea what she's saying. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, with your fancy words, get out what? So now we see Annie is back home and sees the similar doormat again. So we see her take out like a couple of these. So it's like, okay, these are not just similar. These are very exactly like the same stuff. And she also then flips through more of her mother's belongings, finding a book titled Incantations. In it is highlighted a passage about the god King Payman, the god of mischief. And the part that's highlighted says, when successfully invoked, King Payman will possess the most vulnerable house. Only when the ritual is complete with King Payman to be locked in his ordained host. Once locked in, a new ritual is required to unlock the possession. Okay? There's also a part that's underlined that says, King Payman is a male, thus covetous of a male human body. And it also mentions that Payman gets vengeful and livid when offered a female host. So we're gonna have a lore alert about King Payman. Let's learn some stuff. Yeah.
Crossover from our book series with our lore alerts. I just found that this was a very interesting opportunity. So a lot of these movies, you know, especially with like The Conjuring and now with this one, I did not look into this the first time I watched this movie. And the second time around, I was like, I bet he is derived from an actual entity. So I did some research. Just a quick disclaimer and disclosure. I do not advise. I am not a professional. I do not urge anyone to seek out practice with this. This is just off of the movie and the information that I have learned. So with that being said, King Payman was considered Lucifer's most faithful servant, and he is what is considered a jinn. Jinn is derived, or the nickname for a jinn is genie. Rub the lamp, get 3 wishes. Well, with any power that that someone decides to work with, nothing comes for free. So if you are summoning them and asking for assistance, you better be ready to pay up. So King Payman specifically was believed to be in control over 200 legions. That's big power. Payman is also said to behave much like a traditional genie, where he would grant the conjurer a wish, but the conjurer in question must be specific in their wish because he could easily twist the order. That is, you know, fairly common with any type of practice like this. You have to set your intention. When the conjurer invokes this demon, he must look towards the northwest. I put that in there because I was trying to think in the movie when Peter's looking down the hallway, if he's looking towards the northwest. I'm not sure. Fun fact, some fun stuff he likes to do. He
Really?
maliciously inflicts severe psychological, physical, and spiritual torment upon his victims, including reconstruction of traumatic events, as well as horrifying visions and nightmares.
Mm.
So, while it's said that he can also be surprisingly very colorful and very friendly, I do not think I would invite him to brunch.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
And it sounds an awful lot like what's going on in the movie.
Yep. So,
Like, oh, reconstruction of traumatic events and horrifying visions? No
oh my
way.
gosh.
So, yeah, don't fuck with that.
Don't.
No, thank you. So, thank you for sharing. That's incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
So, we now are with Annie still, and she's looking through a photo album. Annie now finds old pictures of her mother with Joan, and they are both wearing the same necklace. And, like, these are pictures over years. Like, they have known each other for a while. And Peter is now back in school. We see him and wandering the halls and sees the light again come down the hallway and go back into the classroom. And this, I tried to zoom in and tried to see what was going on, because I know there's some weird, freaky, creepy thing that there's a reason it went right to that door. Tell me what you saw.
Yes. So it's like the first shot is him like looking at the door, I think, and then the second shot of the energy coming down the hallway. There might be a third shot in between. I can't remember. But when he looks, the teacher is in there. The teacher appears in the window, right? Like very quickly. And then he's looking at Peter, and I think that he's smiling. I'm pretty sure he's pointing at him and smiling.
Okay, that makes it worse, because I thought it was just like, I thought I couldn't make it out because it was so far away.
Yeah.
But I thought it was just like teachers teaching the class.
No, it's like, so you know, like when he was looking at himself in the reflection beforehand and it was smiling. So it's obviously the same entity that's now channeling in his waking life, the vision, the hallucinations, you know.
Oh, I hate that so much.
Yeah, me too.
So Steve is at work, and we see him emailing a colleague saying that he's worried that Annie is on the verge of or currently in the middle of a mental break, and can't blame him for thinking that. She's not doing so hot. And then he gets another email, and also worth noting, his inbox is empty. Goals.
Yeah.
So from the cemetery, like looking at that, I'm like, what kind of doctor are you that you have no emails in your inbox?
Yeah, I don't even want to.
So this email is from the cemetery, and it contains pictures of Ellen's gravesite all dug up. So we imagine for like the insurance purposes.
Right.
And we go back to Annie, and she is just on a mission. She is pulling down the attic ladder and is immediately swarmed with flies. The attic is full of them.
Disgusting.
That can only mean good things. Obviously. And then something obviously smells, and she's like blocking her nose and all that. And then we find a body. And then we get intercut with Peter at school. And then the body that we see is her mother's corpse, now minus a head.
How did that get here?
And the corpse is like, it's all like black. Like the skin is very black and dirty, and not in the way of like from the dirt. Like, it does not, it's like a decomposing nastiness. And then above the body is a symbol on the ceiling. Now, Peter, the same symbol, I should say, the same symbol that was on the necklaces and on the telephone pole. It's that same one. We go back to class, and Peter is like sweating, and he hears like clicking all around him. He's like looking all over the place, like back and forth. It's just one side, the other side, all over the place. And then he goes like blank stare. And then his arm raises up in this like jerky fashion, like his hand's all twisted. And his face is all contorted. And the teacher like thinks that he's raising his hand to ask a question, so he calls on him. And then everyone starts freaking out because they see him like this, and you can only imagine he's having some kind of medical episode.
Yeah.
But then he suddenly starts slamming his face into his desk. So I think it's like 2 or 3 times it slams down, and then he snaps out of it screaming and like on the floor, just completely horrified. And a cool kind of trivia that I read about this scene is that Alex Wolff asked if he could actually slam his face down on the desk.
Did he really?
He's like, yeah, he's like, actually, I just really want to do it. And then of course they're all just like, no. So they gave him like a padded, desk, whatever. But he didn't realize that it was still a hard desk underneath there. So when he went for it, I think I read that he actually did break his nose.
Oh my gosh.
No, he dislocated his jaw, slamming his head down on the desk for this.
Get it. And I just give credit. The entire team on these films of A24, the entire team, the actors, actresses, everyone behind the scenes, they just commit everything. And I just appreciate it so much.
Yeah. So the house phone now rings from the school and no one answers. Then, because Annie's outside, Annie not listening to the phone. Then Steve gets the call from school instead, and we see him, he is having a midday drink.
Yeah.
So he's not coping well. So Steve goes to pick Peter up and bring him home. He nearly runs a red light just out of, just the overwhelmingness of all of it. Like, he nearly runs the red light, stops, and then he starts to cry and just has a moment to himself. And it's like he's trying to console and be there for everybody else. No one's trying to be there for Steve.
Yeah. That's the first time that we've seen him lose any type of composure.
I think so. I couldn't remember if he did before, when he had one moment when he was looking through Charlie's notebook.
Oh yeah,
that he kind of had a moment.
That's true.
But that was just pure grief from losing a child. This is now like that mixed with just the weight and the overwhelming
his
pressure
son,
of everything.
His son calling him, talking about a vengeful spirit. His wife is losing her shit.
Even as a psychologist.
Yeah.
People's got limits, okay?
Yeah.
And so as they pull into the driveway, Annie's like frantic, and she doesn't even notice Peter at first. She's just like, "Oh my God, Steve, you have to come see this. Oh my God, I'm freaking out." And then she sees Peter and she's like, "Oh my God, what happened to him?" Like, and then she's walking in and she's like, Steve, you gotta listen to me. You gotta go up and see this. And you can tell that he is just at the end of his rope. But he's like, "You know what? Fine. If it's gonna appease you, Annie, fine." And then so he pulls down the attic and he sees the flies and he gives her a look of like, "Oh fuck. You're for real here."
Right.
And then he goes up. We don't see him go up and we don't follow him into the attic, but he screams. So we know the body's still up there.
Yeah.
And it is in fact real. So
yeah, I was really seriously, I was anticipating that whole sequence of her seeing the body up there. I thought it was a hallucination. And this part literally threw me off my game. I was like, oh, I have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah, because okay, there's no denying that something funky is going on here, because who the fuck put her in the friggin' attic?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And so Annie runs to go get the notebook and start a fire while Steve comes down. And then she's like running up to Steve. She's like, so like, Toni Collette plays this in such a good, she is full of energy, but it's like anxious energy. And she's just spewing all of this because she's finally figuring it out and putting the pieces together. And she's like, Joan wasn't a stranger. She knew my mother. She tells him about the seance. And as she's rambling, Steve just starts to look at her and be like, "You really did it. You really dug up your mother. I just didn't want to believe you would do that." And he just, trust in Annie's gone. So when we think like, oh fuck, he saw the body, he's on, they're all on the same page now. Instead, it is not that at all. And he's like, you were worse off than I thought.
Right.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
And Annie is just pleading with him. And so while she's just pleading with him, trying to get him to understand, all he's seeing is his wife in the middle of a psychotic break.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heartbreaking. And you could see his heartbreaking. It's like, he loves her and he only wishes that he could help her. But at what point is she past his help and she needs more professional help? And just, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's pleading with him, saying that she started it. Peter's in danger. Which kind of perks him up a little bit and brings his attention back. But Steve is still pretty much given up. And Annie's like, you need to help me destroy this notebook to save Peter. To save his life, you need to help me do this. And so they go down to the living room. Annie just keeps going at him, saying like, it's my fault. I can't throw the notebook in the fire. The last time it happened, I caught fire. I'm just too scared. I can't do this by myself. She's sobbing at this point and pleading with Steve to help her die. And she's like, I can't do it myself. I need you to throw this in the fire. I'm gonna die, but like, you are the love of my life. She gives him a kiss and hands him the notebook, covers it in like what I assume is like lighter fluid of some sort. And she says her goodbyes, and she just kind of stands there, and he stands right in front of her, looking down at the notebook, looking at his wife, like, what has become of us?
Right.
And it broke them. It's broken them.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes the notebook and starts walking to the fire. But first he turns, and so she's like preparing. She's like fast breathing, like getting ready to burn to death. And as soon as he gets to the fireplace, he turns to her and says, I'm not doing this anymore. It's not helpful to you. You're sick. I'm just feeding into these delusions. This isn't helping you. And so she at this point gets, so aggravated, and she's like, oh my God, just do it. So she takes the notebook from him, throws it in the fire, and Steve lights on fire, not her.
Absolute whiplash.
Such a fucking turn.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. The last thing you would expect is that Steve would be the one to catch fire, because we've already seen it that, okay, Annie's the one connected to the notebook.
Yeah.
So now at this point, it's like, that's clearly not the case. There's something else going on here. What the hell? So Annie is, the whiplash. Oh my God. So Annie stands there horrified as he's screaming and burning to death. And then we see the light reflection come from behind her and over her, and her face, fucking Toni Collette, I swear to God, her face goes from the most horrified, devastated look to just completely blank and no emotion whatsoever.
Yeah.
And just,
so
my
seamless.
God, I hope I meet her someday.
I know.
Oh my
That would
God.
be lovely.
Between this and Knives Out, my two favorite movies that she's done. She's so fucking good. If you haven't seen Knives Out, go watch Knives Out. Really?
I haven't. Do you know what my spectrum for her is?
No.
I look at her in Little Miss Sunshine, and then look at her in this.
Oh, see, I haven't watched Little Miss Sunshine.
Completely polar opposite of this. But her acting, she's just phenomenal. She's just phenomenal. Yeah. Watch Little Miss Sunshine tonight.
Girl, it is already 10 p.m.
Tomorrow.
That's not happening. No, I think that one might have to be one I do with my husband, because I feel like he's brought up Little Miss Sunshine before.
Yeah.
So I won't want to watch it without him, but I will have to watch that.
Y'all
watch.
You definitely do it.
So you haven't seen the original. So you haven't seen The Glass Onion either.
Wait, no, I have seen Glass Onion.
Okay, so you didn't see the first Knives Out.
I don't know.
With Anna de Armas and Chris Evans.
I don't think so. I've seen the one with Edward Norton.
Yeah, okay, so that's the newest one.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So there's one before that. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So these movies are following Daniel Craig as that as that detective, and so these movies are following him with different cases. And dude, Knives Out is so fucking good, and they filmed some of it in Massachusetts, and it's so good. And Chris Evans, if we ever, so I guess that would technically fall under our podcast, because it deals with murder, and it's a mystery. Yeah. So maybe be able to slip it in there, because it's really, really, really good. And I'll get to I can wear my Chris Evans sweater, even though I'll sweat through it. And it's not what you think. So back to the horror that we are currently experiencing. We cut from day to night, and Peter's asleep in bed and wakes up to see the lights on in the treehouse again outside of his window. And it's very hard to see, but if you look real close, there's a wide shot of Peter kind of sitting up and getting out of bed, and Annie is huddled and floating up in the corner. You know how fucking creepy people do that in horror movies, where they just get themselves up into a corner,
yes,
and she's just perched up there watching him, and oh my God, this is where it starts to,
there's no music or anything.
So as he moves around the room, she crawls across the ceiling silently in the background, and it's so creepy. I just
fucking itsy bitsy nightmare.
This is one of my triggers with horror movies that will get me every time.
The crawling.
Where I'm the silent crawling.
Yeah.
Or honestly, humanoid crawling of any sort. Oh, yeah. Especially if they're on their back, Exorcist style. Count me the fuck out.
Horrible.
Absolutely not. I'm terrified. So yeah, it's even worse in this case where she's doing it silently, so it's not like you hear her.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I'm pretty sure that That fear, I'm pretty sure, started with the movie The Unborn.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into it, but there's a scene where someone crawls after someone else, but their head twists around. It's really fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like not a good movie, but yeah, it's your typical like 2000s, 2010s kind of horror. But anyway, so Peter is wandering through the house because it's absolutely silent, all dark, and he's calling for his mom and dad with no answer. And boy, if you do not turn on a fucking light, I swear to God.
It's like horror cinema 101. No one turn on a light.
God, it's pet peeve. Oh my God. Like, I appreciate it more in these movies. I don't remember one, of course, isn't coming to mind right now, but there are absolutely movies where people are walking around and turning on the lights as they go into rooms.
I'm like, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give you a cookie.
But I get it. It's atmospheric to keep it all dark.
Right.
So Peter walks downstairs and sees the smoldering corpse of his dad on the floor. And so he's freaking out. Once again, we see Annie on the ceiling again. And then Peter hears a creaking floorboard. And I forgot about this jump scare.
Yeah, I did too.
Peter turns around and sees a naked man standing in a shadowy door frame. What we told you last week with Midsommar about the naked old people. Ari Aster loves naked old people.
They come in swinging, literally.
They do. And of course, they're all smiling.
Dicks and titties swinging.
And they light these people so well where they're so covered in shadow, but you see their features so perfectly. Like, oh, it's so eerie. So as he turns around and sees that, he screams, and then it cuts back to another shot of him. And then Annie runs out of him straight from a fucking shadow, like out of nowhere, and full sprinting, chasing him throughout the house. God. Like, and that's also what I can't. People sprinting after me, like running, like we're running. Okay, if you are sprinting, no.
And listen, I already know my cardio is horrible, and so it scares me even more because I'm like, I'm dead, like immediately.
I'm a goner. You put me up against some stairs, I'm a goner. Like, this is how my anxiety works. So when I'm coming back inside from like going out for a smoke or something, and so I live in an apartment building, and when I'm coming back up the stairs, there's some times where I'll hear something in the lower level, and I'm like, if this was a zombie right now, and I had to get into my apartment and unlock the door, I'd be dead. Because my heart starts skipping, and I can't unlock my door, even though I know no one's coming for me. Anxiety is a crazy mental illness, everybody.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I got 3 acres of woods surrounding us. So God. I'll hear shit in the middle of the night and it's like a squirrel, but everything sounds so much bigger. I'm like, fucking Bigfoot.
Oh my God. Bigfoot. We got to do a Bigfoot movie at some point. It's one of my niches. I love Bigfoot movies. I love alien movies.
Oh, me too.
Have you seen The Ritual?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Zach loves
because when you said you're surrounded by 3 acres of woods, and I'm like, have you seen this one that takes place in the middle of the woods?
Yes.
That movie's incredible.
It is. I
have to read the book. I haven't read the book yet. So anyway, as Annie is sprinting through the house, chasing Peter, who thankfully is very up to date with his cardio, he goes up into the attic and barricades himself up there, and he's like sobbing and asking her like, Mom, please stop. And he calls her mommy, which like, oh God, it makes like makes my heart hurt more for him, because it's like, it just, it brings you back to that like childlike state where you're just like, Mommy. Oh my God. And so we hear like a thudding against the door over and over. It's very rapid and a very rapid pace. And we cut back and see Annie, who is now on the ceiling, because we know that she's able to just float and be on the ceiling. And so she's there and she's banging her head against the door, and then it suddenly just stops.
It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
So Peter turns around and there's lit candles all around the basement, but the body's now been removed, but there's still like the shape of a body. And in place of the corpse is a picture of Peter with the eyes poked out. which sends him into frantics, if that's even a word. And he starts like slapping himself in the face, saying like, you need to wake up, you need to wake up. And damn, some nightmare, dude.
Yeah.
Shit.
It's horrible.
And then we get one of the, as if things haven't been horrifying enough, then we hear squelching and a dripping noise, which is one of our favorite subtitle words to see. As soon as you're watching a movie, of course your subtitles are on. As soon as you hear the word squelching, it can't be good.
It can't.
It can't be.
No.
Peter looks up and we see Annie levitating and sawing off her own head with piano wire. So she's just making jerky movements back and forth. And like just with every jerk of the piano wire, you hear the like grinding against bone and muscle and nasty. But also there's like spurts of blood that are coming out. It's just, and they do make eye contact. So Annie makes eye contact with him. And it's like you almost see her trapped in there while she's slowly beheading herself.
Yeah. That is hands down, for me, one of the most psychologically intense moments in cinema.
That's a very good way to put that.
Hands down, one of the most.
Because especially, yeah, I feel like it adds another layer, if especially like she's just possessed. This is not, obviously we've known that it's not Annie since that light entered her, but like to know that she's conscious in there.
It's her holding the eye contact that makes it that just over the top.
And Peter hears a clinking noise and then sees 3 more older naked people that are standing in the shadows watching him and smiling at him. So Peter once again screams and then just yeets himself out of the window and falls 2 stories out the house into the garden.
Which honestly, same. I would have done the same shit.
Where else are you gonna go?
Yeah.
You know, it felt very realistic to
absolutely.
be like, oh yeah, that's 100% what anybody would do. It's just, run out the window. I feel like the only unrealistic part of that is if the window would actually shatter that easily. But that's it.
I'd probably run into it and be ricocheted.
Bounce back off.
And I'd
open the window first.
I'd be like, can you guys just hold on 1 second?
You stay right there. And so it's silent in this moment. We hear him thud, and we're now looking down at Peter from a bird's eye view, and he's just like on his stomach, all like, he looks dead pretty much. And inside we hear the sawing continue, but now it's like, instead of it's like saw, like it's very fast, very fast paced until it stops. We hear a thud, which is obviously Annie's head hitting the ground. And so still seeing Peter outside, there's a shadow that very subtly hovers over him and leaves the frame, which I never really picked up on before.
Yeah.
And then the little ball of light again floats down ever so slowly and enters his back. And in this moment, I am curious if Peter died and this thing like brought him back to life.
Oh, 100%.
Because I feel like we don't really, either we hear him wheezing or he's just full on dead. Because he looked pretty dead.
Yeah, no, I think 100%.
Yeah. So Peter looks up and sees, it's kind of a funny shot, honestly, but just the shot of Annie's headless corpse just like levitating and then floats up into the treehouse was kind of funny.
I'm so glad that you said that because I thought the same thing. I was like,
a little goofy.
Out of every which way y'all could have done that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's also has to deal with what she's like wearing, where she's like got boots on and it's very like flowy clothing. So it looks like she's in a nightgown just floating around. It's very ghost-like, you know?
It is.
So he gets up and then clicks his tongue like Charlie did. But we look over and sad to say that the dog is also dead. And thankfully they didn't show us that
on screen. Yeah. Very thankful for that.
We now see more nude people that are scattered in the woods. So, oh no. As Peter approaches the treehouse, and then he climbs up. And then we hear some flutes start playing, like, within the soundtrack. And it reminds me a lot of the same kind of Midsummer kind of flute-like sounds. Inside the treehouse, which they fit a lot more. How big is this treehouse? Because I thought it could fit maybe 1 or 2 people in here.
Yeah.
They got multiple. So there's a group of people that are kneeling, bending over, prone, and everyone's naked, so no one fart. And including Joan. But Joan is not naked. Like, that's all I could think of. I'm like, damn, if someone were to let one go, that is pink eye for everybody. So you may be wondering, what are they all facing? Well, It's a shrine built for King Payman.
Hmm.
And there's a mannequin with a crown, and he's holding a staff next to a bird in a cage. I don't know the significance of the bird. And in front of the mannequin are the headless corpses of Annie and her mother, also bowing in the same position. So Peter looks to the wall, and there's a framed picture of his grandmother labeled Queen Lee. So in one of the previous scenes where Annie is flipping through the photo album when she sees that Joan has known her mother, there's photos of this party and a picture of her mom in like this white dress and a veil. And she's like old. She's older, like before she's died. So it's like some wedding ceremony or something. Like it could be a birthday party. We don't really know, but it was suspicious. So now we see Queen Lee, and we're summoning King Payman. So the flutes are now combined with some like chimes and becomes very like ethereal sounding. And Joan gets up from behind Peter and places the crown on his head and calls him Charlie. And she says, "You are Payman, one of the 8 kings of hell. They have looked to the northwest and called him in." And Joan says they corrected his first female body and give him this healthy male host. Okay. So Joan says they reject the Trinity, praising only him. And by the Trinity, we imagine Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Holy Ghost, thank you. And they pray for him to bring them honor, wealth, and good familiars. And she says, quote, "Bind all men to our will as we have bound ourselves, for now and ever to yours." Okay. They all yell, "Hail Payman," and the movie ends. And the last frame is really, really cool, and it's made to look like they're all standing inside one of Annie's miniature sets. But it is, in reality, like these actual people. Gorgeous.
Wild. Yeah.
That's Hereditary.
That's it.
Goddamn. Insane. So we have another cult. It was another cult, you know, but just of a different like, you know, yeah. So diving into some trivia here, Ari Aster actually wrote detailed biographies and backstories for every character, even before writing the screenplay. So, like, just goes to show you how much time and effort he put into this before they went into production.
Yeah.
And the film was also shot in 32 days and 12 hours.
That's
wild. That is a feat.
That is
of
insane.
cinema. So, and that just, it goes even more to proving, like, the amount of, like, plotting out back, like, prep work that Ari Aster really did. I think it was, like, Toni Collette said that, I read in one of the trivia spots, that, like, she was shocked at how much he pretty much had the movie already in his head. Cut, edited, everything. And they just had to shoot it.
Wow.
So it's just, he was so ahead of the game with this, and it made for a very positive and obviously successful, you know.
Yeah, because the quality of the entire film is amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
You know?
So the miniature house is actually an exact replica of the home that the movie takes place in. So they did actually do it a 1-for-1. And another piece of trivia, one of the trailers for Hereditary, this is so funny. And I remember when this came out and this was a thing. So when trailers dropped, it was accidentally shown, the trailer, at the beginning of the PG-rated family-friendly film Peter Rabbit in Western Australia. It caused a small panic in the theater, with parents fleeing the cinema with their kids. The theater eventually shut the screen off and offered every audience member a complimentary movie pass to apologize.
Oh my gosh.
Just imagine going to see a kid's movie and you see a trailer for Hereditary. Oh my god.
I can't imagine.
So this is Ari Aster's first, his feature film debut. He'd only ever done short films before this, and he has himself defined the film as being about suffering. Well, holy shit, did they all fucking suffer?
Yeah, I got the message through.
So if we recall, during the support meeting, Annie recounts her brother's suicide when he was 16 and states that the note blamed their mother for putting people inside him. So Annie chalks this up to schizophrenia, but we can assume that it's very much intended that Ellen originally attempted to conjure Payman through her own son.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I think.
Oh yeah. And his death and her failure to then summon Payman would also explain why Ellen puts so much pressure on Annie to have kids. She's like, I'm old. I can't have any more. It's on you now.
I think Joan her son and grandson dying, I think that she tried to conjure him into them as well.
Oh, maybe. But I don't, maybe.
That's what I think.
That's very plausible. I wouldn't doubt that.
Because I was like, why are they're all males?
That's true.
And he
And
wanted
I thought it was such an interesting phrasing of correcting his original, like,
yeah.
female host.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, we can also connect at this point that given the icon that was on the pole next to where what Charlie decapitated against, obviously that was all planned. So they put the animal in the middle of the road. They caused her to die, therefore correcting their host. It's just it's one of those things that as soon as you know what the end is, you can go rewatch it and just pick out everything.
Yeah.
So throughout the film, as we mentioned, there's a lot of words that are like scrawled on the walls, carved into the walls, and so there's two particular words called the Liftoch Pandemonium. And so Liftoch is an English transliteration. I would say translation. Don't know why that transliteration. That's weird. It's a translation of the Hebrew word to open, which is like to open. And pandemonium is Latin for all demons. And apparently is what Satan, like, this is a very interesting little tidbit. I've never read Paradise Lost, the book.
I haven't either.
But I guess that's what Satan names hell in that book. So it's just very interesting. Like, those were the only ones that I really went into as far as the words, but I'm sure you could dig those apart so much. So yeah, we have gotten a great taste for how dedicated and in-depth Ari Aster goes to create these characters and stories. And it is simply divine. Midsommar and Hereditary are two representations of grief and trauma in their own ways. Hereditary, we really focus in on grief, but within the family dynamic, and we see how each of these people deals with such a traumatic loss, but with the added horror of being used for a cult's purpose that they never signed up for. And it's really tough watching them all be dragged down and abused by the spirit haunting them. So rewatching this through a more analytical lens, seeing the planted scenes throughout the movie, Aster did such a phenomenal job to lay down the pieces without giving away the end result. So you're able to understand, like, okay, this is going to have to deal with a lot of spiritualism, a lot of haunting, a lot of grief, etc., as we've said, but you don't really understand what the end game is until you get there. And yeah, so the spiritual aspect of Hereditary is what makes this a horror movie. I'm pretty sure it was Ari Aster who had said that, like, he wanted, like, yeah, as I said earlier, like, he wanted to make a movie about suffering. He wanted to make a movie about grief and a family's grief. But he's like, I could make this a horror movie if I add a haunting, if I add some spiritualism in here. So by doing that, he created one of, like, the all-time great horror movies that we've had in recent years.
Absolutely. And just like touching on that aspect with spiritualism and implementing it in the horror movie, but also implementing it with real life, I don't know where to begin. So like the whole seance scene where Joan is presenting Annie these items and just telling her, that is like, okay, it's equivalent to walking into someone's house unannounced, right? Like, one, Joan didn't know what Annie's faith is, what her faith practice is. So that's already, you're overstepping boundaries, right? You're not honoring someone's religion, whatever practice they honor, etc. Now, hallucinations within mental illness, there's so many different interpretations. Like when I started learning more about it because of my grandmother, one way that I heard it described that I kind of liked, it's kind of like when you're turning a radio dial and you're in between channels and you hear the static. That's kind of the wavelength that someone in that mindset can operate on. It's like they're in between veils, so to say, right?
Okay.
And so with all of this, with any type of spiritual based practice, anything of people practicing with a Ouija board and summoning, some people can discredit it to science. Some people can discredit it to like going through grief, right? Like there could be this whole other argument that there never was a spirit, that it was all grief, etc. I mean, I could go on for days and days about this stuff. But the bottom line is what they were doing, like, because there are people out there in the world that actually do this shit. There are people, you know, like in Midsommar, and like this is very real life stuff. And it gets really hairy and really dangerous because you're messing around with someone else's life. You're messing around with what someone else is interacting with on their day-to-day life. And I just encourage protection around yourself. Yeah, in all ways possible. But the last things I want to touch on are in relation to this movie. Again, as I already said, payment is relevant outside of this movie. We figured that out. And this is where my Midsummer connection came in, because even though in the movie, Joan calls him the eighth king of hell, when I was doing my research, it says that he is believed to be the ninth spirit of the Ars Goetia. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole with those texts, because also my personal preference with this type of stuff, because I do have personal experience, I don't like to talk about certain things, because when you talk about it, you give it power, et cetera, et cetera. But I know that Aleister Crowley, practiced a lot with the Ars Goetia, I believe, and some other texts. Payment is believed to be the ninth spirit. And then I thought, in Midsummer, they operated in nines. And then I was even thinking about how Peter's eyes are scratched out in the photo, and Simon had flowers sewn in his eyes.
Yes.
And then at the end shot, I was like, that building really looks like the yellow building in Midsummer. So I just thought that it was interesting. Like, what if Payman was working through the Harga also? So I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching, but.
I mean, I still am definitely of the belief that they're all same universe. So
yeah.
I would not doubt it if there's some kind of like crossover in, maybe not specifically with the same like gods or spirits or whatever, but they're there. The connections are there.
For sure. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on, so in this movie, it's portrayed that Payman was inhabiting Charlie all along, right? Like, that's what I think. The clicking, the appearance of the sigil on the pole on the way to the party. And then, as Megan has already said, this would kind of be the explanation on why her grandmother had wished Charlie was a boy.
Yeah.
As well as the joke about Annie barely being able to feed Charlie as a baby because her grandmother was so like protective over her and wanting to, So at the end of the day, kids, don't play with Ouija boards. Don't fuck around with this shit if you're not educated. And that's that.
Yeah. I was actually we were talking about Ouija boards the other day in the Bardic Book Club, which you guys should all totally join. Right. And we were talking about like haunted dolls and Ouija boards and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I brought up a memory that I'm like, I remember me and one of my younger sisters who listens to us, so she knows, she's gonna know. We being stupid kids and playing with a Ouija board. And I don't think anything actually happened, but we did get like a response. And obviously I know, say what you will about how much influence you have moving your own hands unknowingly, whatnot. But I can't remember even what the name was, nor would I want to say it if I even could. But essentially, like, we thought this name was so ridiculous that we essentially started joking about it and bullying whatever this was about it, that it didn't fuck with us. So whether or not we made contact with something, I don't know, but I like to think now that we just bullied this spirit or entity so hard that it just was like, I'm out. I don't want to fuck with these people. And that's on being a teenage girl.
That's right. That was the one last point I was going to make with how they approached doing the seance. That is like, if I'm going to offer any advice to anyone that's actually curious about any of this, the whole thing where like, okay, if you're going to choose to make contact with something, whether it's your angels, your spirit guides, your higher whatever your path of belief is in, you have to be respectful. You have to be respectful. And the fact that Joan just pulls Annie in and is like, put your hand on this thing. You're opening a doorway to whatever. You are literally saying like, you are a plate of meat and being like, come feast. That's what, So
yeah, I'm wondering. So yeah, it's interesting that. So we would imagine, because now I'm just thinking about like I'm thinking about the like conjuring. Why did Joan bring Annie in on that seance? Why did she teach Annie about that? And I'm like, I think it must have been to bring Payman into their home.
It was right? Absolutely, because what is it they talked about? They have to unlock the possession or something.
You know what? Because it only found Charlie at school, didn't it? No, it was at her house.
And
I was like, maybe the women who they were seeing at that school, they were conjuring Payman to get them at school, but Charlie also saw it at home. before any of those seances happened.
Well, and with Charlie drawing in her book, I mean, and the whole book thing, that's a whole nother form of magic also, right? I forgot, it's scribing, I think is the word.
Okay, yep.
Some mediums they'll put on white noise when they're channeling, and they'll like have their eyes closed, and they'll, but so Charlie drawing in the book with Peter, I mean, that was her like literally encapsulating his Payman's essence. So yeah, it gets very hairy and very messy,
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. I lived in a haunted loft for 4 years. And so it's everyone can believe what they want. It gets sticky.
Yeah. No, on the note of like spiritualism and all of that, I will recommend this docuseries to literally anyone that I can get to listen to me. On Amazon, where I know that we don't really boo Amazon Mega Corporation, but on Amazon Prime, there is a docuseries called Hellier.
Okay.
And it is so very good it talks about like spiritual realm. They do a lot of the same kind of experiments that you were just talking about with the white noise, all that kind of stuff. And they approach it like very professionally. These people have studied it. One of them, I believe she's a witch and she has like done all this stuff. They go about it in such a good way. It's not your typical like ghost hunting kind of show. And they're following a very specific, like they're trying to find these goblins in Kentucky. The Kentucky goblins, Appalachia,
Oh yeah.
And it just kind of expands into so much more. And it's such a compelling series, especially to someone like me who I have no background in that. And I went in blind and I was like, this looks kind of cool, fun new horror ghost hunting show.
Yeah.
And my God, it was so freaking good. So I can't remember the guy's name, but his wife's name is the medium, the witch, named Dana Newkirk. Greg and Dana Newkirk. Yeah, watch Hellier. I think there's 2 seasons of it. It's so fucking good. Yeah, I think you'd really like it. Well, I think we've rambled on about spirits and hauntings and all of that lovely stuff before we go to bed for long enough. And
everyone run and jump in your bed. Don't let anything grab you.
But yeah, so that's going to wrap up Hereditary. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and talking about this amazing movie again. Toni Collette, if you ever are able to hear our voices, we love you so fucking much.
We love you.
And next week we get to go back to Flesh and Fire. We are not going to not from Blood and Ash, but Flesh and Fire 2. We are going to A Light in the Flame.
Yeah.
So gotta go see what Sarah and Nyktos are up to, So until next time, I have been Megan. You have been Rachel. You can say, if you weren't aware, you're Rachel.
I'm Rachel.
And we will be back next week.